Dave, we are live. Hello, Penn State people. I'm Bob Flounders. He's Dave Jones. He's back from Downingtown. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting blue-white breakdown, Dave, because I am going to tee you up for some things I think you really, really want to talk about. I know you were at the Penn State men's basketball game last night, but I just wanted to make sure I get the order right. I just want to get your thoughts on Juwan Howard, and I also want to get your thoughts, Dave, on the decision not to expand the college football playoff, I believe, for the next 4 years. So, with those three things in the air, like, what do you want to dive into first?
I would like to dive into the fact that we are two great-looking guys, huh? Look at that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Dave, this is the first podcast I've done without some sort of hat on.
I was going to say, I was actually considering a hat because I've got really bad bedhead, and I didn't get up until like an hour ago because I was driving back from Maryland from the basketball game. And
Penn State fans, you're welcome. You're welcome for the visual.
Do I look like Tad Boyle? You don't even know who that is, do you?
No.
He's a basketball coach at Colorado, and he was at Air Force. He's anyway.
You look more like Tab Hunter.
I know I don't look like him. I'm distracting myself. So how about that? So we're gonna do it different this time. What do you want to know? Oh, Maryland. What a ridiculous. Sometimes they've got all this protocol, right?
Right.
They've got a lot of protocol at Maryland, and I'm for it. I'll do whatever you ask me to do, but fulfill the protocol, right? If you're going to prepare for all these things. They ask you with your credential application to bring proof of vaccination, which I came out in favor of. I'm great with that. So I do it. Yeah. You take a picture of your vaccination card, and then I'm looking for the media entrance. I don't really find it, but they let me through another entrance, which is kind of weird, but okay. I'm fine with it. I come in. They don't check for any vaccination card. Then I go around to the bag table, and there's this kid who might have been 21, maybe 19, and he's going. He's kind of nervous, and he's like, and we don't usually allow people in with backpacks, and he's not even used to having media there. I went, dude, I'm a reporter, and he's taking like 20 seconds to say this, kind of like I am now. And he's going, we really don't usually allow back. And I said, dude, I'm a reporter. We all have backpacks. And he went, okay.
That's your fault. You went in the wrong entrance, Dave.
No, he let me in. Everyone said
that's because you intimidated him. That's why.
So after all that, then I'm on the wrong side of the arena. Have you ever seen where the students sit on that wall?
I can't say that I really have a lot of knowledge of the Terps
basketball
gym.
Arenas. Okay, well,
no, just to that one.
It is, it's the Xfinity Center. I believe used to be the Comcast Center. It's one of the places where they take over your internet on your phone, your connection, and try to force you into using Xfinity all the time. You know those.
Yes.
It's delightful, especially during deadline. But you gotta walk down this wall from that end, and it is cool. I mean, it's like 36 degrees. I heard it's as steep a seat level as there is in college basketball. But I was like going down, descending the Hillary step. I mean, it was very, very cool. Anyway, that was my experience.
Well, hey, at least you made it back safe. You intimidated a poor guy just trying to get some money, probably a student work hours. Completely.
Bob, we really usually don't allow people without hats to do the podcast.
Dave, I still think we could have led with something else. Juwan Howard, Wisconsin. I think you were thinking of writing something about it. I'm not sure if you were able to do it yesterday because it was on the budget because you were going to the game, but I know you had some pretty strong thoughts about it. He's going to be suspended for the rest of the regular season, 5 games. Everyone else involved, I think, pretty much got, 1 game or minimal. There's a little bit of finage going on, but what did you think, and how shocked were you at the way he behaved?
You didn't read what I wrote then, right?
That's what I'm saying. I did not read what you wrote, but I saw I saw the tagline on the
Yeah.
budget.
Okay. I just didn't.
I don't.
I
But
didn't
when you
understand.
said you went to the Maryland
I
game,
got
I
you.
thought,
I didn't quite understand.
yeah.
What I wrote was that I really couldn't get all that worked up over it compared to some other stuff that is going on in the world right now, and people are losing their minds and clutching their pearls over this. On the other hand, it was a couple of big babies on both sides, the coaches. And Greg Gard's not blameless because he's one of those passive aggressive guys. And so is Wisconsin. Wisconsin as a program, since Bo Ryan took over, has been the nudge. You know, they've always got the guy like Brad Davison who will take little cheap shots and give elbows and then go to the ref when the guy responds. One of those guys, you know, and he's in his eighth year.
A pro wrestling move.
He's in his 8th year now. They're annoying and everyone hates him. Everyone in the league hates him. And I was a huge fan of Dick Bennett, not so much of Bo Ryan that much, but I know
Bo Ryan, the lady killer.
He was an interesting guy. And now they got Bo's protege, his spawn, Greg Gard, who pretty much is a Wisconsin guy without Bo's style. You know, he looks like a bus driver. He's and he was doing little things throughout the game, and then so was and Juwan Howard got his brains beat in. I mean, Wisconsin. I don't know if I was watching the game, but I was like 40 minutes.
Well, I did. It was one-sided, and I was just barely looking at it because it wasn't really competitive. And then I just saw a melee, and then I saw what started it. I'm like, the coaches started it.
Did you? So you were. What were you doing when you were watching?
I was in a bar, Dave, having a little. Yeah, I've been in a bar with friends, and I'm looking at the score, and I was talking to a couple of my friends, and they go, "Oh my God, look at the TV!" And these guys are just throwing haymakers, and they finally winded back to what started it. It was the handshake line. I'm like, "What is going on?"
Yeah. So you were kind of doing one of these, and then you know where I did that? We were dancing in Al Gornick's field house in Steelton in 1994. Was it 92, 94? 94.
Steelton.
94.
Yeah.
To the Full Effect Band, having a great time. And there's a tiny little TV over in the corner. And I look over and I see this police chase with a white Ford Bronco.
Yeah. Is that a Friday?
Huh?
That was a Friday, wasn't it?
It makes sense. I guess it was. Yeah.
I think it was.
What were
anyway.
you doing? Were you out of?
I think I was in the office.
I almost said, were you?
I was probably in the office.
Huh?
No, I was in the office.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Fridays, man. There was no. You can't get out of Nick. You had to work Fridays and Saturdays.
I've never seen a bar that was really rocking and having fun, and we're all having fun. I'm there with Anna and our friends, and we loved this band. And
what was the name of the band again?
The Full Effect Band.
Boy, if there was a video, I wish there's a video of this. Just you dancing, cutting up a rug in Steelton. I think I'd pay a lot of money to see that.
I used to love that place. I mean, it was a fun place. But the whole place just transformed into everyone watching the TV, and the band was pissed off. I mean, it ruined the entire vibe of the night. Well, this thing was a succession of mess with you, little passive aggressive moves by the coaches. Greg Gard's probably left his starters in too long, finally took them out in a 19-point game with 48 seconds left. They're doing victory laps. You know, the freshman guard, mind you, hit a 3-pointer at the shot clock, and they're really celebrating. They're living it up. And then he takes his starters out. So Juwan Howard thinks, okay, I'm going to press the walk-ons. And he gets it down to 14. You know, for what? What are you doing? What are you doing? He gets it down to 14, and Greg Gard, and then they're pressing the walk-ons again, and the timeline clock is at 4, and Gard calls a timeout. Ostensibly, he said later, because he wanted to give the walk-ons time, an extra 6 seconds. It rewinds.
A violation or something. Yeah.
You call a timeout. God, come on, man. Come on. You know that's like the hateable frat, but the who was the other frat house? Not the Deltas, the other guys in
Oh,
it's like those guys.
you're talking about the Delta. Oh, it'll come to me. Just keep talking. Keep talking.
Anyway,
I'll get it.
It was, and then Juwan Howard has got to be just seething. He's been glaring down at you, but guard has to go through the handshake line and shake hands with everybody, which he did, and he gets up to Howard, and Howard says, "I'm gonna remember that." Takes his mask down and says, "I'm gonna remember that," and guard can't say, "Okay, fine." Look at the scoreboard and walk by. I mean, wouldn't that be what you would do? Why would you not do that? But no, he's got to stop and try to explain the rule stipulation. And, he puts his hand on his arm, and I would have done the same thing. You know me, I'm probably going to blow at that point, and anything could happen.
Short fuse, Jones. You got a short fuse. I know.
I'm not absolving Juwan Howard because everything was pretty cool at that point. I gave him plenty of leeway to have a jostling match with guard and say, get your MF and hands off of me. And then that would have been the end of it. But Joe Krabenhoft.
Great name.
Yeah, well, you remember Girardi and I used to call them the Luftwaffe back when Bo had it, because they had so many guys with those German names, and they were Aryan looking, and it was just funny. And he was the lead red ass of the Badgers back in the glory days from 10 to 12 years ago. And he has to get into the scrum. Just look, and you can see him. Sharif Chambliss, who's also a Badger assistant, former Lion from Racine, Wisconsin. He's trying to be a peacemaker, it looks like to me. I got a hold of him, but he, as you can imagine, didn't want to say anything. Yeah. Neither did Phil Martelli. I texted both of them because I know him pretty well. And they weren't going to touch this, of course, but I had to try. But Krabenhoft's like the frat boy that he was, even at 34 or whatever he is. Like, hey, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? You can see him doing that. And Howard just takes a pop at him. I mean, you knew
he slapped him. It was an open hand slap.
Yeah, he just kind of bitch slapped him, and he just wanted to throw down with him, because Joe Krabenhoft is that kind of guy. He really is. He always was. There's certain guys in the Big Ten over the years who you loved having on your team, hated playing against him, and really hated him. He's kind of lowercase Bill Laimbeer, one of those guys, and then all hell breaks loose, because when Howard throws, whatever you want to call that, throws the slap, it gives all the players tacit approval to go at it. And this is not hockey. You can't do it. It's not a professional sport either. You can't do it. You cannot do it. No matter everything else was provocation. And then Howard does that. Hey, man, at that point, anything is game as far as punishment for him. I would have thought about, I called up Fran Fraschillo, my old friend who's a coach, who coached at St. John's in New Mexico, and a longtime assistant under Gary Williams and a whole bunch of other people at Ohio State. I've known him since he was at Ohio, when we were both kids. And he said, I wouldn't fire him. This is before the decision was handed down. Yeah. I wouldn't fire him. But you got to think about the rest of the season, and that's what Michigan ultimately did. I thought it was going to be between two games, the ultimate minimum, because I could read Ward Manuel's first statement, kind of giving him wiggle room, and I'm thinking, man. So I thought it was going to be between two games and 5 the rest of the season. I knew they weren't going to fire him because he's part of the Michigan brand. He's Fab Five. He's royalty in Michigan. Plus, he's going to recruit like no Michigan basketball, and has already, like no Michigan basketball coach ever has. And that includes guys who were, I'm not going to even say it, but
don't say it.
They were doing things that probably weren't legal and now are. I'll put it that way. What did you think of his apology? You read it, right?
Not very believable.
Huh?
He didn't. His heart wasn't in that apology.
Yeah, Brennan.
I don't really think he meant it. I think he's
Our
still pissed.
our friend Mark Brennan saw that and put out like a Facebook posting or on Twitter that this is the right thing to do. Seems like a sincere apology. Did you think that? Mark's like my oldest friend in the business, and I love him and everything, but I just don't agree with him there. I kind of feel the way you do.
He was literally probably put a gun to his head and said, "Write this if you want to stay at Michigan."
And you know what else he did?
They probably wrote it for him.
Yeah, well, it looks like he wrote about half of it, and the part that he wrote probably was sincere about the Michigan man and everything. But you know what else he did that people didn't catch except from Wisconsin? He didn't get Joe Krabenhoff's name right. He called him Joe, which very easily could be another little passive-aggressive dig.
Sure.
Yeah.
What are the odds, Dave? These guys are going to see each other again this year in the conference tournament. They still have that, right?
That's one of the reasons I've been asking Chris if I can go to Indianapolis. No. It would. Well, they'd probably have to have a police presence available, would they not?
Oh, the ratings, Dave. The ratings.
And let's face it, there is an elephant in the room here that is also true. If you would try to, if you had to name the most black urban program in the Big Ten, it would probably be Michigan. If you had to name the most pasty kind of rural program in the Big Ten, probably Wisconsin. I don't really think race came into it at all that way. It's more about just personality of the programs. They basically just don't see anything alike, which is funny. It's not a racial thing per se. It's just funny because Michigan, if you had to try to pick two neighboring schools that really see nothing the same, probably be Michigan and Wisconsin as far as the kids who go there. They're both kind of liberal schools, so that's alike that way. But as far as the athletic teams, in football how much they hate each other, except they just don't meet each other that much.
Yeah, Dave. I thought like earlier in the year the hostility between Texas and Texas Tech because of the coach changed sides, and it was like it was thermonuclear, I think, at Texas Tech when Texas walked into there the first time. But I think for the next couple years, it's going to be a little bit of an intense atmosphere for Michigan, Wisconsin, whether it's in Ann Arbor or in Madison. It's going to be. I think both teams are going to be ready to go. As far as you're going to see some really, really, really intense games.
It would be worse if the fan bases of those two schools, especially for basketball, just aren't that combustible. Like if they were going into, if Michigan was going into West Virginia, that would be like a WVU field arena. That would be the Coliseum. That would be intense.
That's a good point.
Wisconsin people are too nice, and Michigan fans they don't really care that much about basketball. They never did. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be like Texas Tech. And plus, the coach at Texas Tech used to be at Texas. That's
that's what I meant. Right. Yeah. I'm just saying. I think it's just going to be a little. It's going to be a little warm. I think in those arenas the next couple times they play. All right, Dave. We're almost 20 minutes into the Blue White Breakdown podcast. We need to talk about the decision to stay at 4 teams for the playoff. For the next few years. What do you think about it? Did it surprise you? In your mind, what is the impact on Penn State, if anything at all?
Well, this consortium that the Pac-12, the ACC, and Big Ten ostensibly were making really seems to have no purpose now. I mean, to me, the whole purpose of this historic alliance, as they called it, was to pump. And by the way, I wrote about it before they did it. I almost feel like Kevin Warren read my column, because they weren't. I didn't hear anything about this until like 2 or 3 weeks after I wrote what they should do, which is try to acquire as much computer juice in the computer rankings as possible. Well, how do you do that? You probably pare down your conference games to 8 and start playing teams from the ACC and the Pac-12. And I said that exact thing. And then they came out and did it, said they were going to do it. Well, the Big Ten is saying they'd rather stay at 9 games now. Well, how are you going to have room for another a game from 2 games from cross conference games? You're not. And the ACC kind of blew the whole thing up. The ACC blew the expansion to 12 or 8 up. I'm sure the SEC wanted 12. I don't know what the hell the ACC thinks or wants, but they better be careful. Their grant of rights goes a long time. But to me, Florida State is a vulnerable entity, and so is Clemson for poaching from the SEC. And I don't know. You would have the same problem with it rationally as you would with Texas and Oklahoma. It's like, what are you doing? You can win this conference. What are you doing going to that? Well, it's all about money. And if you can make, like the ACC is making about $32 million per school on their TV agreement, their TV and streaming agreement, because they signed it for a long period. I think it's 20 years in advance. And why would you do that? I'm pretty sure it's 20. It might be 15 years. It's a long time in the future. And this is a growth industry. Why would you lock yourself into that rate, which is it's already obsolete? While the SEC, I think, just signed their new agreement at $56 million per school. The Big Ten will probably top that in its next contract. And here's Florida State and Clemson in a place where they could be losing the arms race. Now, the SEC would have to want them enough to chip in their buyout, because they signed a grant of rights with the ACC for like 30 years in the future, and it's going to be costly. But it was costly to get Oklahoma and Texas out. It might be worth their while. I think it's a misstep. I think anything that expands the playoff, and I don't know how you feel, but I feel is good for the leagues that have been suffering and not getting any teams in the playoff. Well, who is that? That's the ACC, other than Clemson. Notre Dame's been in a couple times, but they're not really a full member and don't want to be. Yeah. The Pac-12 has had almost no involvement. I think the ACC blew it up. The Big Ten was in favor of it. They wanted to expand it. Kevin Warren came out and said that. Yeah. I think it's a boondoggle. I think they should have said, okay, how many do you want to expand to? 8, 12, whichever. I would have preferred 8 myself, but I could have agreed to 12. How do you feel about it?
I agree with you, and I think if you're Penn State, I mean, you said the Big Ten. I mean, I think a lot of schools are not happy about this. I mean, I don't see how James Franklin and Penn State are happy about this, because you expand, you have a chance of getting a second or even a third team in the playoff, and now you're going up against Ohio State, who's just going to, like you say, they stack 5-star classes, and I mean, the odds are, the way that the conference is set up, there's not going to be a second team from the Big Ten considered. It's just not going to happen. And I think that there's nothing wrong with 8 teams, I think, in the next year or two. But to stay at 4, I mean, I thought this was going to be a foregone conclusion. The only question was, how soon were they going to do it? But I think the majority of the schools have to be pretty unhappy about this.
It was a foregone conclusion, I think, until Oklahoma and Texas jumped to the SEC. And that kind of chafed the historic alliance conferences, pretty much everybody else, especially the Big 12. And then everyone put the brakes on it, almost to spite the SEC. I mean, Sankey, those guys, they're like, hey, whatever you guys want to do, we're gonna have 2 teams in the tournament.
I was gonna say, they're still gonna have half the field.
Yeah. Well, they were banking on having a lot of the field anyway. They wanted a
like
lot
3,
of
4, 5 teams.
Yeah, they were thinking 4 or 5 if they had a 12-team tournament, and that's what they wanted. And you can understand that, but at least you have a chance. Like I said, if you're all playing each other in these other conferences, and the SEC is playing Troy and North Texas for 4 games, which they do. A lot of those schools, not all of them, but a lot of them do, especially the Alabamas, and so they might play 1 TV game. Then you've got more computer juice maybe, and you can, because they do look at metrics, the committee, they do. And if you play better non-conference games, even if they're marginally better, at least against power conference schools, you can rationalize, well, we should be in. These guys didn't even try. They didn't play anybody. That's the way it works in the NCAA tournament. If you have an expanded football tournament, it's more like the NCAA tournament. You have to rely more on metrics. Yeah. If the alliance had stuck with this plan, ripped up their non-conference schedules, said, okay, we can't play Toledo this year. We can't play San Jose State. We're going to play these games. Suddenly, the SEC, they're not so comfortable in this position of knowing that they're going to get 4 or 5 teams in a 12-team tournament. I think it would have put them over a barrel. But, nobody in these are all 3 new commissioners. Kladkoff at the Pac-12 and Warren, and all 3 of them are brand new guys. And I don't know, maybe they're feeling their way a little bit, but to me, it looks like a blunder.
Dave, this probably isn't a fair question to ask anyway. If Jim Delaney's still the Big Ten commissioner, is there anything he could have done with his clout behind the scenes to maybe finesse the situation, or was it totally there was nothing anyone could have done once the ACC?
Yes, and that's it relates to exactly what I just said. These guys are rookies. When Delaney was a rookie, he went through the fire with the Penn State admission into the conference, and he was really not a part of making that happen. That was, as I wrote about, it was up to Stan Eikenberry, the president of the Council on 10, and Donna Shalala to put that together in the 11th hour, or it wouldn't have happened. I mean, he kind of stepped on his you-know-what in putting that thing together, and his part in putting it together and allowing it without a plan. He got mature really quickly. He came from the ACC, a North Carolina grad. And by a couple of years, he was up to speed and putting together major TV deals. And by the time he'd had 30 years in the league, man, he had incredible clout. But not only that, from people I've talked to, like Mark Rudner, who's retired now, who used to be a major player putting together TV deals for the Big Ten. Delaney, for all you can detract from him as far as this Belichick-like personality, was really good at getting everyone to
politician
pee through the same straw. Have you ever heard of that expression?
Nice. Never heard that before, but I'll allow it.
One of your political friends taught me that one. Yeah. You might guess who he is, an operative. Yeah. But Delaney was very good at, and Donna Shalala told me this too, when I talked to her about a few other things when I was on the phone with her. And I mean, this is a political woman. She was a U.S. Congresswoman. She knows how these things work. And he was great at allowing everyone to fight and allowing everyone to have their say and almost exhausting them. And then saying, okay, we're a group. And when we go out into the world, we have to act like a group. We have to act in unity, not just talk in unity, but act in unity when we get out there. We all had our say, but this is what we're agreeing on. And he was a very powerful presence that way in getting people to cooperate and coalesce as a group. A lot of people didn't know that the Big Ten Network was going to work. It's the only one that has, and it's been quite lucrative. And I knew in 2007 when they put it together that this guy had the right idea. I knew it would work because the Big Ten has this fervent following. They wanted something like this. And he was going to get it on basic cable. And he held out for a couple of years in the case of Cablevision in New York and Warner in the Midwest until he did it. And it's been a mother lode for the conference. It's been a golden egg. And he's really the only guy, the Big Ten's the only one who's pulled it off. If they got Jim Delaney behind this, I think he would have pulled everyone together. But they didn't. They had 3 new commissioners.
So Dave, let's do the math for the Penn State fans real quick. So 4 years away, does that start 2022, 23, 24, 25, or is it 23, 24, 25, 26? What are we talking about as the earliest some change could be made with regard to the playoff? 2026
season. We're stuck with what we have through 2025. So we're talking about 4 more seasons of 4 teams, 4 more years that the sport gets more and more regional into the South. And what's to prevent that? A lot of the players are in the South. We've gone over this many times.
Yeah.
The Rust Belt, the areas that Scrap Bradley used to recruit out in Western PA. I mean, you're old enough and have enough. When's the first time you watched a PIAA high school game, like a tournament game at Hershey? 93 when you got here, 94?
Yeah, I think I was my old paper. I was there for 4 or 5 years, but I didn't really make the trip. The football wasn't particularly great in Lehigh Valley, but yeah, so it would have been like 93, 94, 95, 96.
Well, what would you say? I think the difference is noticeable between the WPIAL schools then.
Yeah.
And we didn't even see, because I came in in 89, you came in 94, although you have Pennsylvania experience before I do. We didn't even see the glory days of the 60s, 70s, early 80s. But then even since we've been here, I think the difference in high school talent in Western PA is noticeable all over the state then compared to now. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, it's funny. I think one of the first year I was here was John Ritchie's final year, maybe his final year at CV. And what a player! But Rod Frisco, who used to work with, said, "Yeah, did he play in the band at halftime too?" Is that? I know that's a weird thing to say, but he was such a great guy, a great football player. But he was also in the high school band. But I was like, who is this monster playing? I don't think it was the trombone at halftime and just devouring people before going to. I guess he went to 2 different schools, but I think he ended up at Stanford.
Yeah, my brother-in-law tried to recruit him from Michigan.
Didn't he go to Michigan first, then go to Stanford?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Michigan and then Stanford. Yeah, and Fred talked him into Michigan, and then he got 2 years of Ann Arbor weather and said, "Nah," and then he went to Stanford.
Anyway, that's what when I came into that.
Yeah, but you remember the Western schools in Pennsylvania. That's all gone, absolutely. Man. I mean, it's the shadow of what it used to be. That's population drift south is what I'm getting at. And really, I mean, part of the reason that Delaney invited Maryland and Rutgers is he could hope to tap in to the one part of what would be the Big Ten footprint where they're still producing a good amount of talented recruits, the Mid-Atlantic. I mean, would you not say that the Mid-Atlantic is the new honeypot, along with parts of Ohio, Cincinnati, but that's the honeypot recruiting-wise of the whole league. And I still got some, old Midwestern buddy friends that go, I don't even like Penn State, let alone Rutgers, Maryland. Wait, you're all recruiting their regions now. Do you realize that?
Yeah. DC, Maryland, Virginia, all those schools, there's there's still some pretty good talent there.
Yeah, the Allen Iverson, Michael Vick region of Virginia, the Tidewater region. This is the future of college football. And the South is even recruiting California quarterbacks. That didn't ever used to happen. And now all the great California quarterbacks, which has been really the cradle of high school talent in quarterbacks forever, as long as I can remember. It's always been California and
Don't
Texas.
Forget about Johnny Unitas, buddy.
Yeah, but
don't you
that's
forget
what
about Johnny U.
We're talking about Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Joe Namath. Those days are gone, man. Now it's for the last 40 years, it's been California and Texas.
Yes.
And those kids are leaving Pac-12 schools. They're coming east. The kid at Clemson, C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, Alabama kid. They're all California quarterbacks, and that trend is not abating. How do you stop that? Well, how about a Pac-12 team or 2 in the tournament? That's how you stop it. They want to play at a high level. Pac-12 football is evaporating. I mean, it is almost a non-entity. People don't even care. I mean, have you seen UCLA games at the Rose Bowl? Have you seen the crowds?
They're not even. It's not even half full.
It's like 15,000 people. It's ridiculous.
It's sad is what it is.
USC in the recent downturn. USC is the one school along with Oregon, but Washington's beginning to evaporate. That was a huge football school. It's all just dissolving in front of our eyes because college football has become this regional entity. Well, why? Because there's only 4 teams that make it. And you exacerbate the problems you already have. If you have 8 or 12, all of a sudden kids around the country see schools next to them who are in. You get the glory. Now, maybe a quarterback still wants to play in warm weather. Well, they used to in California. They're not necessarily going to go to the South. That's what we're talking about here.
I don't think history is going to look kindly on these new commissioners, Dave, in 4 or 5 years. And I think the phrase is cutting off the nose to spite your face. Is that the one that fits while I did this?
I like
just a huge mistake.
I like pissing through the same straw. Yeah, I like that better.
I'm going to have to look that up. I think I knew who told you that.
You know who to ask, right?
I know who it is. I know it's one of 2 people. It's one of 2 people. I'm going to ask them both.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, listen. I think that was a pretty good conversation we just had on the playoff. Juwan Howard.
Playoff.
Obviously, you loved your Maryland experience. So we'll see how the rest of the month. But Dave, before you know it, spring practice is going to start. Your favorite time of the year for Penn State football. I'm excited. And I think you're secretly excited.
Yeah, I can't wait till those weightlifting figures come out, boy. Some great stuff. We'll have 4 posts on
David.
that, right? Yeah.
All right, David Jones. I will see you next week. You and your bedhead. I'm no one to talk. You and your bedhead get some rest. Rest up. I get high school wrestling duty this Saturday, so I don't want to hear it.
Speaking of other things, I got a wrestler here. I got a guy who wants in. You want in? Do you want to wrestle? Nick's coming home today.